had something else in our March box. Not only did we have Nina's book, but we had this very cool print. I have to tell you how I came across Tyler's work. Let me sit this down because I think the glare is getting the thing. Can they see that without the glare? Anyway, my son was working at a restaurant called 8 Mile as a bartender in Salt Lake, and it's right at the mouth of, I think, Little Cottonwood Canyon. I get them confused. Little Big, maybe they're both together. I can't remember. Anyway, it has this really cool retractable roof and these really cool tenant improvements, and it had Tyler's art everywhere, and it had sort of this kind of rustic, historic flair to it. And as I was looking at everything, I thought, I think that is so cool. And my son said, yeah, like I love it too. And so I thought I'm going to go try and find him. And I looked him up on the internet, and lo and behold, he responded to me. And I was super excited because I ordered a couple of original pieces for my house that they're kind of long and narrow, which isn't a size you typically find easily. And so I was really excited that they fit in my entryway so nicely. And I asked him if he would be willing to do a cool print for our book boxes, especially once I saw that he did these lectures that used to read to factory workers. So I thought I would love to have that job, right? They actually, I think they were paid the most because they were the most educated. I think Tyler told me that, or I read it on one of his cards, maybe in the back of here. But anyway, so we're going to bring him on, and I have some questions for him too that some of you have submitted. And so we'll get to know him a little bit and learn more about his art.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm really good. Your art is so unique. Like, I love your slim characters. So I think my first question has to be, what made you ever think to do it that way? Like, that's kind of an unusual signature type thing.
Yeah, I think when people first see my art and they have never met me, they expect me to either be very tall or like very short and I'm compensating or something. But it's really more of I just love surrealism, and that style of art has always caught my eye. I remember as a kid, I would always play with dimensions of figures. Like I remember seeing caricature artists at SeaWorld drawing the huge heads and little bodies.
Right?
And yeah, and it just got me thinking like, wow, that's really neat to play with the proportions. And so I started drawing, little guys with like giant hands and just playing around with that. And then later on I found, Salvador Dali and
Yeah, I can see
Giacometti,
influence in that. Yeah.
and it just blew my mind. And I saw that style and that playing with dimensions in a fine art motif, and it just, and that's where I started drawing and playing with that. And the long legs in particular, it just makes me smile, and I don't really know why, but that's enough for me.
Yeah, my husband and I love it. We really do. And that you came up with the idea for the whole yesteryear thing too, which adds this whole, I love history. So to me, I think that that's also another thing that makes your work very appealing to me. But before we get to the questions that my readers have submitted for you, I wanted to point out, I don't know if I told everybody, of course, this is signed. I don't know if you see Tyler's signature right there. So that was so kind of you to take the time to do that. How long did it take?
It was probably a week of signing them while my wife and I watch Netflix. So it was, it means something. I get that. It's like the hand of the artist. So it was a good suggestion and worth the time.
Yeah. Well, now you know that's like a day in my life, right? I have to do this. So now you know what that's like.
Yeah, it's an honor, it's fun. And I'm so, yeah, honored that you wanted to share my work with other people, and especially people who love to read. Like, what a cool connection.
Yeah, yeah. I think that this lecture piece, I really especially love it. Super cool. So I want to ask you some questions that they submitted to me. So that's what I'm looking down here for. Karen Carr wants to know, how did you get started with your art? You said that you were kind of inspired, but did you have, I mean, by these cool surrealism and stuff, but did you have a father that was in the business, or any other mentors that kind of, how musicians, sometimes it's because their parents were musicians, or do you have anybody in the family that also does art?
Um, my dad actually, he went into some kind of engineering direction, drafting, and I always loved drafting too. And I actually started to become an architect, and then realized like they don't get to draw much. They're just on the computer and straight lines, and that's just not my thing. Um, I see the creativity, and I know I have some more distant relatives that were like, I think it was my great aunt was a painter, just in the home. She just loved to paint little things. But I don't know, directly where it came from, but I honestly, what catapulted me into doing this as a business and as a lifestyle and a job is meeting my wife. I mean, she is the business visionary and also my muse, and just us together, I got the confidence to paint and really explore these ideas in depth, and she had the know-how to help us figure out how to make it into our business, and so I credit her with most of it, and the rest is just gifts from God, I guess. It's just meant to be.
Well, on American Idol, they always ask, if their parents like were not unhappy, but tried to push them toward a more practical, shall we say, vocation, one where you're going to get, certain amount of income every month. You got your, benefits. Were your parents at all sort of saying maybe we should do engineering or architecture? Were they more supportive of that? Or are they pretty excited about your ability in art and saying no, you can go out into something creative? It's more of a gamble, but go for it.
They were very supportive and always so encouraging with my art. Like, I remember as a little kid, I could always draw. Like, I had that ability, and so I distinctly remember like trying to draw the pictures from the coloring books and like recreate them, and just being so excited when I could get them, pretty close. And my parents were always so encouraging in that, and they still, I mean, all my parents have so much of my art in their home, and they're so
That's what
proud
I was
of
wondering. I'm like, that'd be so
oh.
cool to be related to you. Like I have stuff everywhere. You must give it for like Christmas and everything.
Like, everybody I'm related to pretty much has gotten a piece of my art for a gift. That's just like standard. But yeah, they've, as far as a vocation, I grew up in South Dakota, and so there weren't a lot of artists around me and people doing that for a living. So, they didn't discourage it, but I never really realized it could be a job, and I always just enjoyed doing it. So I kind of went in that more practical direction. I got my art degree, but I started teaching and got my teaching degree. So I was teaching elementary school while continuing to work on my art on the side and in my free time. So I think that, their encouragement was paramount to my success and who I've become as an artist and as a person. But I think more of what, looking back, how they've inspired my art is, they were just hardworking people. Like, when I was born, my dad was a farmhand helping my uncle on his farm. My mom cut hair for a living in our little town, and they just worked hard. And I think that that's part of why I enjoy this topic, is I just appreciate everyday people just putting in the time day in, day out to provide for their family. And so I see them coming through in how I chose my theme and what I focus on with my art.
Oh, okay. And are you also somebody who works every day? I mean, I know artists can set their own schedule, but how long of hours do you have to work every day?
It's it's more like how long I get to work, because we have two young children. We have two boys that are 8 and 5, and so my wife and I kind of fight over time to work, and so
I remember those
I
days. I have five.
yeah, so I love working, and I love working on the art. It really brings me a lot of fulfillment. And yeah, I definitely work hard. I mean, we bust our butts, and we have to make this work for us, but um it really doesn't feel like a chore. It's just how I was raised, and it would be, I would be sad if I couldn't work hard. I would it brings me a lot of fulfillment at the end of the day to look at what I accomplished, and I try to teach that to our kids as well.
Yeah, if you're like me, it's almost harder to stop than to start. Like I love my work so much that instead of people maybe who are not that happy with their job counting down, thinking, "Oh, it's almost five, it's almost five." I'm thinking, "Crap, it's almost five when I'm going to have to quit," or whatever the deadline is. So, do you feel that way about your work?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I call it the flow zone. Things are just flowing and time is just irrelevant. And I'm like, oh no, it's 4 o'clock. I gotta go, take the kids off of my wife's hands and give her some time. Yeah, it's really just, I've had jobs like that where I'm counting down the hours. So I get that, and I appreciate people that do that. And that's part of what I celebrate with my work is just the hard workers. But I feel so fortunate that my wife and I can do things we love for a living, and we're going to keep doing that as long as we can.
One of the pieces that Tyler made for me was these big, tall trees and a lumberjack, and I love that lumberjack. And then another one we've posted pictures of them. I'll post pictures of them after. It's harder to describe them, but anyway, I do.
I have a lot of art right behind the camera right here. So I'm currently at a festival. This is what I do.
Let's see.
Um, so I just came here tonight, from Michigan to Houston. I'm in Houston right now. Took me a day and a half to drive here, and all day today I was just setting up the booth. And so it was so perfect that you wanted to do this tonight, because I have like a booth full of art that I
Yeah,
can show you around. If
show us. Is this new stuff or stuff I've seen before on your website, or what am I going to see?
There's a mix of old and new. A lot of it is new. I've been working and painting hard, as I say, and
Painting.
um, so the whole, for people that it seems like they would know about it, but they're all jobs of the past and workers of the past, and so celebrating those with my long limbed characters. So yeah, I'll just kind of pan around and
I'd
just
love
say stop, or I don't know. I'll
to
just
show us whatever you want to see. We want to see it, or want to show us. We want to see it.
all right. So here we have farmers on a haystack.
Oh, look at
Can
the
you see
lighting.
that?
It's
Oh
hiding
yeah,
characters on the top, but those are the legs of the characters. And if you get up top, oh yeah, look. Oh, now we can see it. Cool.
yeah. I'm trying to do the camera thing backwards, but yeah. So I have these farmers standing on top of this haystack, these horses pulling it. That's a new piece that I really love. That's the size of yours that you have. It's that.
Right. Is it also on
Um,
wood, Tyler?
yeah. So all of my paintings that you'll see, I actually, when I'm in the booth, I show people this little guy. Um, so this is a block of wood. You see, it's a panel of wood, and then I make the figures out of paper, and this shows like the 4 steps of making the figures on each painting, including the two you have. So I start with this watercolor paper and draw it on there. I cover it with these torn bits of this brown craft paper, and then I trim the edges, and then I paint the details in, and then affix it to the wood panel. So especially in person, you notice the dimension that these figures have. It's part of drawing your eye to them and really making the piece about their story, and literally they stand out to the viewer. So
Yeah, literally.
it's a yeah. So yeah, I've got farmers. I've got a poultrymen feeding some chickens here.
I love the clothing and everything. So cool. Look at those chickens.
Yeah, so I base a lot of them. I use a lot of old photos for reference. So that's I want it to feel authentic in the clothing and the look, and then the style, of course, is where I get to have some fun. Um, got a lamplighter, which is one of my favorite
Oh, I love.
themes.
Yeah, I love him.
Yeah, and the lamplighter is actually the very first character, the very first job that I depicted was a tall lamplighter on this bicycle. They would light lamps, and some lamplighters actually built tall bikes and ride from lamp to lamp. And something that is, I also like to point out with this one especially, is that in every painting, I always research why this job became a thing of the past, and I'll
Yeah.
put a little clue in there to show you why, or how it's changed, or why it's obsolete. And so with the lamplighter, it's kind of an easy one to show. I've got the little power outlet there.
Cool. That's so cool.
Yeah, so every painting has that. Like the farmers, the first one I showed you has a little tractor in the background, showing going from horses to tractors and on and on.
Cool.
Um,
That is so
yeah, I
cool.
mean, yeah, I've got a lot of new paintings.
Oh my gosh, you do. Take us back there.
So let me.
Like shopping from a distance.
Yeah, this is. I
Oh,
did a redo.
there's
So
mine.
this. Yeah, this is it's a much smaller version, and I just loved it so much that I wanted to try it again and see if I could just change it in some little way. And so I had fun recreating that piece in a way, and they're turned out different from yours in very important ways that but I love that composition. So you picked a really good one. I love that painting
Love
you
it
have.
too. I mean, the just standing and seeing the trees, I just think it's so cool for where I put it too. So where in that painting shows, I need to go look closer, apparently, shows what made a job of yesteryear.
So I like to make it subtle, but you see this little silhouette. It's a little chainsaw silhouette sticking out of the tree.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I
So
got
going from the crosscut saws to the chainsaw, really made a difference in how we harvested wood from the forest. And
you. Yeah.
um, one of my favorites too from this, I always get a lot of questions like, "Where are the women?" Like you paint so many men. Where are the women? And honestly, I paint a lot of women, but they often sell first. Something about it, they just often fly off the walls for me. But right now I have three new originals that depict women, and I really love this one called the Hat Maker in particular.
Oh,
Let
yeah.
me
That's
get out of
beautiful,
this.
Tyler. Wow.
Yeah, so
Nice.
those women who would sit in the factories and sew hats, or sometimes they'd make them at home, and just the handmade quality of hats. It's just and clothing, and a lot of the things made in this era was just, it had the hand of the maker. And that's why I love researching it and looking at old things, because you can see the person behind the thing
Right.
often.
My first book was actually about a seamstress, and back in Victorian England times, and it was
Hmm.
just fascinating. Some of them would go blind from the many long hours and not having enough lighting, and the teeny stitches, and I mean, just I mean, that's a horrible thing. I'm just saying that it's just that anybody had to do that, and what an interesting life that would have created. Lived up in this narrow garret, where they did this, and so anyway, that painting that you just showed me reminded me of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the takeaways from studying this, is that work was hard and work was dangerous. And, that just makes me appreciate them even more. They didn't know any better. They just had to work. And it makes you appreciate our modern comforts and how cozy we have it.
Yeah,
But yeah, people that worked in the factories, and the saying, the Mad Hatter, was they used mercury to felt the wool often, and hold the shape of the wool, I believe, and the exposure to that mercury would make them go crazy after a time. So yeah, it's a good thing that work is so much safer nowadays.
right, right. So, did you have any more you wanted to show us before I ask some of these questions that readers have submitted?
Um, some of them yeah, I really love this ferryman. And part of what I love is just,
Ooh, gosh, they're all awesome, Tyler. I love them.
I love that he's like facing away from the viewer, kind of looking off into the distance.
Yeah,
There's just something so kind of hopeful about this piece.
yeah.
And I just, yeah, I don't know. I honestly, one of the stories I learned about ferrymen, so a lot of the farmers kind of up where I live in Michigan and Illinois and Indiana and Ohio, they would, when they wanted to bring their goods to market, they would build a flatboat,
Right.
and they would build a flatboat, load it up with, their goods and often animals they wanted to sell, and they would go all the way down the river, all the way down the Mississippi to New Orleans often, and sell their goods there, and disassemble their flatboat, sell the lumber, and then make their way back home. Before steamships could go against the current, they would, have to kind of hoof it. And
Wow.
just what an adventure, right? I mean,
That is so
um,
Tom Sawyerish in a way to me.
yeah, well, it's funny you bring up Mark Twain, because I was reading a story about him. There was a guy who wrote about this famous paddle wheeler, the steamship paddle wheeler that sunk
Uh-huh.
off of the coast of North Carolina. And there was this captain of that boat, and he visited South America and wrote a book about it. And Samuel Clemens read that book, got
Uh-huh.
so entranced by South America and how this guy depicted it. And so he went down to New Orleans to catch a boat to South America. On his way there, that's where he heard the boats and the boat captain say Mark Twain, because it would mark the depth of the water. That was a saying they would use to mark the depth of the water on the river.
Oh, Mark the Twain. Mark. Okay, interesting.
And so he ended up not being able to get a boat to South America, and changed his life, and started writing under the pen name of Mark Twain. So
Wow, what a
yeah.
great story for readers. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I love stories. I love reading, and that's
Well,
you know,
that's actually one of our questions. We have, uh, let's see, I'm trying to find which one it was. Said the lectures are fascinating to me. This is Deborah Hicks. The lectures are fascinating to me. Did you love reading before you became an artist? And if so, did that contribute to your art?
yeah, I consume stories. I've always loved and appreciated people who told stories. And then once I found my genre, I just fell in love with historical fiction and nonfiction about the past. And that's mainly what I read. I do dabble in fiction just to take some breaks sometimes, but it feeds my work. For example, right now I'm reading this whole book about this group of lifesavers. They were called. They were the first iteration of the Coast Guard,
Ah,
and there's a group of lifesavers who were in North Carolina, and it was right after the Civil War. And there was this really incredible individual who was an incredible lifesaver. He was just knew the tides, knew the coast, but he was black, and because of his race, he wasn't allowed to run a crew because he couldn't be in charge of a white person by law.
oh, wow.
And so the story is of him. They promoted him, but they gave him an all black crew, and they were one of the most incredible life saving crews in the whole nation. It's all about his life. So,
Sounds really interesting. I feel a painting coming out of this.
well, that's why I'm reading. I want to create a really big piece, and I want to really like spend time with his story to let it, let it just work, percolate in my mind, and really formulate well. And it's just a great book and a great story. So books and research inform my work so much. It just drives me, and it's what gets the juices flowing for me.
Wow. Well, this is going to be a little bit of a small world story for you. We have a reader in the group named Kelly Carlson, and she said, I actually met Tyler at an art fair in Denver a while back and loved the idea of these. I learned about the origins of uppercase and lowercase. How many more ideas does he have to continue this series?
Yeah, that's incredible. I love meeting people. That's part of why I love this life, is I get to get out and like share my work with people in person and over, interviews and whatnot. And it's funny, like certain people, it really sticks with them. And it sounds like that's the case for her. And the whole uppercase, lowercase thing, do you know what she was referring to?
I think you must have told her the origins of uppercase and lowercase. Do you remember where? I don't remember this. I don't know the story myself. I was actually going to ask you to share it, but maybe you don't remember it either.
Oh no, I remember. Yeah, it's so a typesetter, before the days of digital print and the advancement of printing techniques, there was the typesetter who was the person who would literally face this whole chest of different of letters, in different fonts, and they would set the type, and there was these little metal, pieces, and then they would actually have to compose it backwards in this little like
Seen that
tray.
in Outlander. He owns a printing shop at some point. I don't know if you know the series Outlander on. I think it's Hulu or something. But anyway, they have he's doing that. So yeah, I follow you.
Yeah, so the whole uppercase, lowercase letters, that was about like the upper cabinet of this chest was the capital letters, and the lowercase were the smaller letters. So that's where the uppercase, lowercase, where that comes from. So
Wonderful. Well, now we all know. That's awesome. You're learning such interesting tidbits about history. It's kind of like I love that where people say, "Well, did you know where the saying the upper crust came from?" And or the different sayings that we take for granted that you just have said all your life, or you heard people refer to them. Well, what are the origins of those sayings? And some of them are quite interesting.
yeah, I'm the way my mind works, like I can remember those little tidbits so well, like and yet I'll, forget somebody's name I just met instantly. But I love those little tidbits of history. And as far as answering your question, I have a whole list of jobs that I haven't painted yet in my studio. I just keep like a running list, and I keep adding to it, and it's probably 30 long right now. I've painted almost 200. I'm approaching 200 paintings in this series.
Wow. How long have you
And
been doing it professionally?
So this is our sixth season, I believe. The series, the first painting I did was about 9 or 10 years ago, but I was teaching and I was waiting tables at the time, and so, but full time, this is our sixth season doing it, and I do about 20 to 30 paintings a year, um, depending on the year. But yeah, I don't know. I have no plans on stopping the series. I did take a little diversion into a different series, a fictional series, at one point, and just had some fun with that, just to kind of step away for a bit. And I don't know. It's been endlessly fascinating, but if it ever runs its course, then we'll find the next thing.
Yeah, I hope you don't run out of ideas anytime soon because I'm really enjoying it. What I love most about your work is that you dare to be different. Like I really have not found anything else that reminds me really of your work. I mean, you mentioned what was the first one I recognized. I'm not that great in art, but the with the clocks that bend.
Salvador
Yeah,
Salvador Dali, yeah.
yeah. I mean, once you said that, I could see that influence. But when I look at your work, it doesn't really, I don't think, oh, kind of like, I guess we went through that Impressionist period or whatever, where everybody was doing those houses that looked sort of similar. You know what I'm talking about? The
Yeah,
Christian art,
yeah.
or the Christian artist that has passed away. And he went huge. Kincaid, Thomas Kincaid. And everybody was doing these sort of same house type settings and scenes. But yours is just really unique. Have you had anybody try and copy you?
No, not that I know of, and it's just like it's the things I enjoy. I combine the history with this style, and I it does make a unique combination in my mind, and it just suits me so well. But I'm all for people trying to do it or copy. It's not, we're all kind of playing off of things we react to and we experience. So I just feel like I'm stepping on the shoulders of those who influenced me, my teachers and other artists, and um, but I have not seen anyone go in this specific direction, and I try to be as like weird as I can, both in my life and my art. I try to be bold, I guess, is a way
Yeah.
to say it.
Well, it's a great niche, and I really, really think it's fun and really enjoy your work. Let me make sure I got everybody's. It's getting kind of late, so I don't want to hold you too long. Vicky Watts wants to know what is the hardest part about being an artist.
Oh man, it's pretty good being an artist. I don't really, there's the parts of being an artist I don't enjoy as much as, like, emails and doing the
Business
computer
part,
work and what's that?
the business part.
Yeah, that's just not my wheelhouse as much, but I definitely see how important it is, and I do love like the connection I get through that. Um, but I just love it. I just it's really my calling. I just love thinking about art. Like everywhere I go, I see something that catches my eye, and it I'll just kind of like catalog that, or I'll think about that later, and it just feeds everything. Everything feeds into the art, and it's such a beautiful way to live, for me anyway.
I call
Um,
that going into the well. Whatever goes into the well somehow comes out again in one way or another, at least for me as a writer. And I just had to do this whole well drilling process with my mother on her land. I've never had to drill a water well. We had to save her water rights. Anyway, long story. But that whole thing is now coming out in a book now. And my husband's laughing, going, whatever you experience, it always seems to manifest in one of your characters or your books. So yeah.
Yeah, to me, the way I put it is, and another artist said this, I forget which artist, I wish I did, but it talks about breathing in, like when your experience, and for me, travel, my wife and I love to travel with our kids or without them. We just like it, we breathe in, and then when I get in the studio, that's when I can breathe it out and kind of
Yeah.
make space for more.
Same
Um,
type of thing. Yeah, that's great. So, does your wife and kids do they travel with you? Are
Most
they
of the time, yeah, yeah. For the most part, this is a rare trip where I'm here by myself for about 10 days, which is about as long as I've ever been away from my kids.
wow?
Um, but they're gonna fly down, and I'll pick them up in Dallas, and then we'll drive back together. We've always built this life. We actually quit our jobs and started doing this full time because we wanted to spend more time with our oldest son, who was 2 at the time. We just, we're running the rat race and barely affording daycare, and we're just like unhappy, and knew that wasn't the life for us. So
Yeah.
we found a way to to try. We went on the road for 9 months with our son and a camper and a SUV full of art, and we just lived out of a storage unit in Boulder, and we just never looked back. So
That's
yeah,
what
we're
I like
our
doing the
kids
show.
go everywhere. Yeah. So we started doing art festivals and saw the viability of it, and what a great opportunity it was to connect with people, and just saw the potential of it. So yeah, that really is. It's such a beautiful format. I get to meet people, talk about my art, show them the art. They often have a chance to buy it or later on, or it's just this great direct connection, and I just so enjoy that. And this weekend's the first one of the year, so I'm like pumped. I'm ready to go.
How
I'm
many do
just
you
so
have?
excited. We usually do like 15 to 20 in a year, in a
Wow.
full year, but we haven't had a full year for 3 years now. So
Yeah.
um,
Did COVID kind of shut you down? Was that difficult, or were you able to drive traffic to your website instead?
yeah, we had a lot of support online. We had a few patrons and people that we knew that just like sent us some money, which was just so generous and incredible. And no, it was a different adjustment, being home, but we found projects, and my wife and I had wanted to build this giant sculpture of a lamplighter for a long time,
Very.
and so we did that, and just figured out how hard that was. And
It was hard.
oh my gosh, it was like we thought it'd take about a month or two, and it took like 8 months.
Oh my God.
And we joked that it was like 8 months of marriage counseling, because we also had never really created something together, and so that was a learning process, and she had to put
Oh,
up with me. And yeah, it was but in the end we created something, and it was great. So
yeah. Yeah. That's wonderful. Melinda wants to know: do you ever start something, then don't like it, so you don't finish it, or do you always finish it?
I definitely look back, and I've got a few unfinished pieces from more of my early work, but I'm usually so into the idea that I know there's something there, and so sometimes I have to fight through a piece. Something's not right, and I have to figure it out.
Yeah.
But I finish almost everything I start nowadays. I think different artists work differently. Some artists will just work on a bunch at a time. I'm more of like I'll work on just one at a time, or maybe like a few small ones at a time. But I really just like getting into that story and that character, and just like focusing on it. And that's kind of the way my mind works. So
Yeah.
it early on for sure. I made a lot of bad art. That's just part of it. You're just like
Of course.
learning. And yeah, so I probably shouldn't have finished a lot of things I did finish, but that's how you learn. So
Lesson, lesson, like you say. You must have been excited when you met the owners of Eight Settlers, because they have so much of your work throughout that place, and it really pops with that whole gel cell thing around their tables, and like they did their tenant improvements really cool, and your art really enhances all of it behind the bar, how nice the bars are and everything. That must have been an exciting sell for you.
I mean, it just speaks to how you never know. Like the next person that comes in my booth could be someone like Katya, and I don't know her husband's name, but like they just, yeah, they built a whole distillery, and it's just full of my art, and it's incredible. And I'm just like
Gallery.
tickled.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah,
a Tyler Voorhees gallery to walk in there. So
yeah. I mean, it started with like her buying a bunch of prints, and then they were looking for this centerpiece, and then we got this idea to make. I made her one, and yeah, I just that's what I mean. I mean, I meet people the whole season of art festivals, and I just like I'm just amazed at how they're taken with my art. I'm just continually amazed by it. It's just fun.
it's fun finding the people that it really speaks to. So, as our parting question, we'll let you go, but we want to know, where can we get your paintings and prints? Why don't you give everybody your website and the best way to contact you if you'd like, so they can get something too.
So the website is tylervoorheesart.com. You can just Google it if you're not sure how to spell Voorhees. It's two O's, two E's. That's what I tell people. But tylervoorheesart.com, and you can see most of the jobs of Yesteryear on there. and including the new ones that I just finished. You can nab one before the festival starts tomorrow if you feel so inclined. But yeah, there's prints and originals on there that range from $45 and up, and yeah, so that's where you can find them.
Awesome. Well, we are so excited that you were able to visit with us tonight. Thank you for giving us a window into your creative process. Love your work. As you know, I'm a big fan, so I'll have to go pick out my next piece pretty soon.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and yeah, enjoy your evening as well.
And thank you for all the signing and everything you did for this.
Yeah, I got, my hand is stronger for it.
Yeah, we can't let anything happen to that hand, though. We need more art. So thank you so much. You have a good luck with your festival.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You bet.